Welcome to Athletes to Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct, and we work to create the premier platform worldwide to enhance and strengthen alumni, to create stronger opportunities for them, create communities for them, and enhance their business development. And along the way, alumni can mean a lot of different things. It could be college alumni, it could be fraternities, sororities, business, alumni association, and athletes. And we're trying to create content. And the whole meaning of this show is we really want to teach and inspire athletes that there is life after sports. And I'm so excited today. We were talking a little bit beforehand to have Taj Dashaun on. Now, Taj is like my idol now. That guy's awesome. He's written books on athletes to entrepreneurs. So this show, it's the perfect fit for what we're trying to do. And he's going to tell us a lot of different things. Taj played college football. He has a very successful show, Thrive After Sports. It's a podcast. He's the host of that. He's an author. I mean, that one thing, Taj, everybody tells you got to write a book. Haven't gotten there yet. Someday, maybe. I don't know. I know you have to get to it. But anyway, Taj, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Rob, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm so glad that shout out to Danielle from Tackle What's Next. I'm glad she introduced us. I know this is the beginning of a very long and fruitful partnership, and we're just getting started. So honored to be on your show.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it as well. So I always tell people, this is fun. A lot of different questions that we ask and, just very laid back. So the first question I want to ask you is that, tell me about your journey growing up playing sports. So kind of take it through when you started up until like college.
Yeah, my first sport was basketball. Started when I was 5. Then I started playing soccer. I was like a one sport at a time kind of guy. So basketball, then soccer. And then I saw this movie, which of course you're familiar with, Remember the Titans.
Great
I saw
movie.
that when I just watched it like 2 weeks ago again, just to still one of my favorites to this day. And I saw that movie and I was like, I want to play football. At the age of 10, started playing football. And by the time I got to high school, my freshman year, I knew that I was on a mission to get a scholarship. And so leading up to college, I didn't have a great junior year, which obviously is the most important recruiting year. Senior year, I kind of brought it full circle, got back on some schools' radars, and ended up going with Stoneybrook. I took a visit out there to Long Island, took a train into the city, went to New York, and I was like, hey, I think this might be good for me to get out of the bubble of California for a little bit. And ended up going to Stoneybrook and loved every second of it. I had some tough times, but I wouldn't be the man I am today if I didn't spend some time out there in Long Island.
Man, I'll tell you what, that's a long way for California. I mean, I ended up in Florida from New Jersey. I started at Delaware, so I was a little closer to home, and then it ultimately moved to Florida. But yeah, that's kudos to you to taking that trip and going all the way there and starting a whole new life probably with not really knowing anybody there, right?
Yeah, it was culture shock at first. Obviously, us laid back Californians are different from some of the folks of the East Coast. But once I got accustomed to it, I never got accustomed to the weather. I always tell people the freezing cold was something that I never got accustomed to. But the people, still some of my best friends to this day are out there in Jersey and New York and all in the tri-state area.
That's great. Yeah, good people from there.
Yes, sir.
So,
yes, indeed.
So tell me, did you dream of being a professional athlete growing up?
I did. I think every kid does. Even in my yearbook, I think like the 6th grade yearbook, future occupation, I put NFL player. So it was tough for me once I realized that wasn't going to happen towards the tail end of college. And but ironically, that kind of led me into everything I'm doing now. But definitely wanted to play in the NFL.
Yeah, I always, every show I say it, but I'll say I would have loved to have been a professional baseball player. Unfortunately, I didn't have the talent, so I ended up doing what I'm doing today. But you how do you think sports help to shape you? I mean, we talk a lot about a lot of these athletes I talk to, just the practice, the preparation. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where I always use the analogy of not an analogy, but the example of all of us are almost raised by our sport, because if you made it to an elite level, collegiately or professionally, chances are you started playing at a young age. Like you go through puberty while you're still playing your sport.
Yeah.
So it's like the game raised you, and so for me, it's when you're done playing, I still have all those characteristics. Like you mentioned, Rob, just the film, the practice, the game, being in a routine, being hungry to constantly improve. All of that is still with me to this day. I just, use it in different arenas now.
Right. That's great. So now, when you're in school and college, and obviously there's a lot of practice time and game time and all that. So, how does did and every school is different, but did Stony Brook prepare you? Did they have like classes or sessions to prepare the athletes after their career was over, so to speak? Like you're playing for them now, but how did that work there?
Not too much was going on. So it was either, and I graduated in 2013, right? So obviously things have gotten significantly better, even in the past 3 to 5 years. I think number one, I didn't necessarily do a good job of seeking out those resources if they were available. And that's also, those resources weren't necessarily put directly in front of us as athletes either.
Right.
So for me, it was a challenge, which is why I was telling you before we started recording. I love what you guys are doing at Alumni Direct, because that sense of community is what I was missing. I felt like I walked across that stage and was just thrown out into the world like, hey, good luck out there, versus having a support system, having a community of people who had gone before me to really help pull me up. So it was very challenging. And my whole story. So, just I struggled for many years to try to figure it out. And, hats off to you for what you're doing. I think it's needed for
Yeah.
many different reasons.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's, I talk a lot about the challenges of networking, connecting, and whether it's an athlete or any alumni from the school or anything else. But a lot of people don't know how to do it, and so what we're trying to do at Alumni Direct is we want to create the community where people can. It's almost like I want to take people under our arms as a company and to help and teach them, because the people that are athletes, how to network and connect. I do. I mean, there's if you went to an Ivy League school, fraternity, sorority athletes, they know how to do it, but I think the other 90 to 95% of people really don't. And so if we can help that's great. So now, playing football there, I'm curious, is there, and this obviously, like you said, things change now, but is there an alumni presence, and you're working with different schools too, but whether it's the alumni, they didn't necessarily have to be athletes, or maybe athlete alumni, when you're playing, do you see that? And I know some of the bigger schools, you hear some of the stories, the negativity about, sponsors and things like that. But tell me a little about your experience with that.
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak to my experience, of course, and then, and some of the things I see now. When I was going on, of course, there would be players that would come back and speak. But in terms of just having that tight knit community, that didn't really exist. And I can't honestly say that that's something that really exists now, at least at a high level. I think that, and let's just, the truth of the matter is athletic departments, coaches, teams, their job is not necessarily to send athletes off and, help them just succeed in everything they do in life. They have to focus on the upcoming seasons and things like that, of course. So, there's a lack of plugging into an ecosystem of other former athletes, like I was saying earlier, who have gone before you. So in my experience, we were just trying to keep in touch on Instagram and Facebook at the time, like try to check in with each other. There wasn't this like, hey, there's this huge list of people who graduated before you. This is what they're doing now. Here's their contact information. This is what industry they're in. And these are some people who can help you. And I think the isolation for me is what made it more difficult, because I felt alone. I felt isolated. And I thought I was the only one struggling to adapt to life after football,
Right. Yeah, you're right. It is tough. And I mean, we talk about, like, let's say if you're interviewing people for jobs and you got 5 people and they have the same credentials, but one went to your school, chances are you're going to hire that alumni. And that's, kind of what we want to foster. And I think some of the things that we've talked about too is just, helping these athletes and understanding. I mean, it's funny, you talk about social media. Now for you, social media it's more prevalent now, but even when you were going to school, it was still prevalent. Like for me, social media didn't exist yet. Okay. So there wasn't an internet when I was growing up. Like, but I think, so what's your impression there? I mean, is there a need, and do you see where, again, it could be college alumni coming back and teaching these people, these athletes, whatever the sport might be, that kind of maybe the dangers of social media, but not the helpfulness of it too, but how to do it the right way.
Yeah, just a quick note on that. So I'm in that weird age group. I'm 31, so I'm in that weird age group where I didn't necessarily grow up with, like, being on social media 24/7 on my phone.
Right.
And we had MySpace and stuff like that when I was in high school, but it wasn't on our phones 24/7. Instagram didn't even come out until my senior year of high school, or senior year of college. Excuse
Okay.
me. So, it was a fairly new world to me too. And the thing about it is, to your point, when it comes to social media, of course, social media serves a purpose. It's great to keep in touch, but it's not. When we talk about creating opportunities and actually being successful, and being connected with the right people, like you mentioned earlier, like getting the foot in the door, and athletes hiring other athletes, or giving them internship
Right.
opportunities, or just being in your corner to help you out. Social media doesn't necessarily serve that purpose. It's
Right.
kind of just about posting and showing the highlight reel of your life, and maybe staying in touch with friends. But aside from LinkedIn, of course, LinkedIn is better suited for that. But if you're not educated on the right way to actually utilize those
Right.
platforms, or you're not connected to the right groups or getting in front of the right people, then you can't necessarily leverage social media um, the right way if you're not taught how to do it or put in
Right.
front of the right people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, one thing I've been talking about too, a big topic now is NIL. And so, obviously it's new. So give me your thoughts on that as far as, how it might have been for you in that time, but also like what you think of it today, and if it's a good thing, a bad thing, or both.
I think it depends on the situation. Am I happy that collegiate athletes can get compensated for the name, image, and likeness? Of course. I think it's long overdue. However, I think it's the wild, wild west right now.
Right.
And once again, going back to not having systems, schools, universities, companies, and of course the athletes themselves are scrambling to try to navigate these new waters that everyone
Right.
finds themselves in. So I think it's awesome. What I have loved, I went to Stoneybrook. So I'm not necessarily, even when I was playing, I wouldn't have necessarily gotten a deal from Nike or anything like
Right.
that. But I might have been able to, make some money at the local pizza shop or something like that.
Right. Right.
So I think it's wonderful. But once again, I think it's so early, and it's just amazing to see like that the structures weren't in place. Everyone knew this was coming, and still everyone's scrambling to keep up. And so I think a lot of athletes and athletic departments are finding themselves in deep water. That obviously that's not across the board. That's kind of a
Right.
generalization, but it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out, and hopefully things come together sooner rather than later.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, the athletes' livelihood is at stake if they don't have a proper support system to help them navigate these waters.
Yeah, I agree. That's something. I mean, we talked a lot off air, and that's something we're trying to do too. Is I think there's, you mentioned like Danielle with Tackle What's Next. I mean, there's organizations out there that really want to help, and I think more and more we want to make those introductions and help these athletes out. So now, kind of once you got done with, did you play anything after college, or did your career stop after college?
It was over for me. I was plain and simple. I wasn't good enough, so I didn't even try to go to any camps or work out or anything like that. It was weird because I was almost excited for the next chapter of my life. I just thought everything was going to fall into place, and work itself out like I always had, because I was good at football.
Right.
And I found myself getting slapped in the face by the real world. Like, hey, nobody's coming to knock on the door and just give you a 6-figure salary. Like, you're gonna have
Right.
to figure this thing out. But nah, no, nothing after college for me, football wise.
So, share a little bit. I mean, I talk about, Taz's podcasts are great. And when he talks to even your story and other people's stories, but take me a little bit for whatever you want to share. Your story of, now you're done with sports, and how you kind of transitioned, through the bad times and the good times to ultimately what you're doing today.
Yeah, and I know you know my story, Rob. So I'll just try to fill the listeners in without taking up the whole hour to tell it. But
They need,
because it's
need to hear it. So feel free.
okay. Yeah, it's been such a journey. So when I came back home from college, a lot of drinking, a lot of isolation, like I mentioned earlier, was just completely lost, and I thought I was the only one going through it. And so what ended up happening was, one day I was just like, all right, I can either keep waking up hungover in my childhood bedroom every day, or I can use my athletic mindset like I always have and try to put myself in a better position and figure out this whole game of life after sports. And so what I did was, stop the drinking, started taking care of my health again, and put myself in position to educate myself, learn how to create job opportunities for myself, because I didn't have experience. So I had to create opportunities. And what led me to doing what I'm doing now is that I was working in recruiting, this was like 2, 3, 4 years after college. I was making great money. I had finally made it, so to speak,
Right.
but I was feeling called to do more, meaning that I felt like what I was doing in recruiting, although I was enjoying helping people, I felt like I was being called to do something greater. And the whole time I had been kind of mentoring athletes who were coming up behind me because I'm like, hey, I was in your shoes not too long ago trying to figure my life out. Let's get on the phone. And I was helping athletes on the weekends, before work, after work. So I'm doing research. This was 2017. And I'm like, I wonder if there are any resources, because I know I didn't have them, to
Right.
help athletes transition. And like I said, it's gotten a lot better now, but even in 2017, I didn't see too much going on. So I'm like, you know what? I'm already doing this. Let me put together some curriculum based on these conversations I'm having with athletes and based on my experience, basically being the light at the end of the tunnel and being that person I needed in my corner. And I found it Thrive After Sports. And I quit my job prematurely and I went broke and I had a lot of ups and downs. But I've stayed consistent through the years. And because I really care about this mission and I'm actually getting results for people, a lot of great things have happened from it. You know, ended up starting the podcast that obviously brought more awareness to what I was doing. Wrote a couple of books, you know, and now I'm at a point where I'm fortunate to have sponsorships from universities and different companies and nonprofits that I'm partnered with that sponsor my work. So I'm able to actually earn a living helping athletes, but I don't have to charge the athletes, which is a beautiful thing. And I worked very hard to get here, and I'm loving every second of it, you know?
That's awesome. It's interesting too that. So how does that work with the sponsors? You know, and you know, is it a matter of them being like sponsors on shows or things like that, or it's just more of them setting up programs to help funding?
Yeah. So what it is over the past few years, especially as you know, a light has been, um, you know, athlete mental health, even athlete transition has been more of a trending topic these days. Like people are starting to realize, oh, this is an actual need. You know, you get the whole like more than an athlete movement. You know, you see certain athletes just talking openly about their mental health or their challenges when they left their sport. And so what's happening is there are a lot of organizations popping up who are starting to raise money and getting funding and grant money for this type of work. And so it was almost like a perfect alignment of everything because I had that track record of working with athletes for free and also, you know, occasionally getting university sponsorships for their graduating seniors. So as, you know, the past 2, 3 years, and I had been in business just trying to find my way for like 2 years at that point when these organizations started popping up. So I reached out to them, connected with them, or sometimes they would reach out to me. And the way it works is essentially I'm at a point now, and I have been for the past few years, where I can work with an athlete for free and I'm able to tap into grant money from these different nonprofits or even for-profits with partnerships to show that they're using this money towards athlete transition and athlete mental health. And what a greater way to do that than to sponsor someone like me who's getting tangible results for athletes and helping them, you know, have a softer landing through their transition.
So I mean, is the goal to kind of build a like a team? Because obviously, you know, we all face this as only one of us. You know, we like to clone ourselves. But is that something that you could foresee doing? Is building on your mission and adding, you know, maybe people, like-minded people to the team that can kind of spread out and just, you know, create the help that's needed?
Yes. Yeah. So I have a lot of ideas on this. So just like NIL, also the athlete transition space is the wild, wild west.
Okay.
But the good thing about it is that instead of everyone operating in their silos, we've entered a period where all of the people who are doing great work and have been doing great work over the past few years in this space are starting to join forces.
That's great.
So you have people who, like me, I'm great at programming, you know, one-on-one group coaching, you know, recently started speaking at universities as well. Then you have people who are great at like really just doing workshops. That's their expertise.
Right.
You have people who are great, like Danielle, Tackle What's Next, great at having events dedicated to serving former athletes. So everyone comes together and now it's these ecosystems of, hey, I'm good at this, I'll do this. I'm good at that, I'll do that. And I think as we come together as a unit, and now, you know, Alumni Direct is part of that movement as well, because you're serving current and former athletes. So as we all come together, my vision for it is really just playing my role right now. I know what I'm good at, and that's the coaching. And as time goes on and I'm able to expand and continue to team up with great people and great companies and great organizations, at that point, I'll have not only the resources, but I'll have learned so much about how to operate and run a business to the point where I can grow and scale the Thrive After Sports brand, which is exactly my long-term vision, like you said, to have other coaches doing what I'm doing. So
yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think there's so much to go around. And we talked about before with this athletes transition study. I mean, there's millions of former athletes, and I think it's just it's great that that stuff's out there. So if you can give some advice, like what giving advice based on your journey, why don't you tell athletes who kind of your what you give your story, but tell them like a little more about this whole thing about how you can turn into something special, and whether it's in the entrepreneurship or other walks of life.
Yeah, well, I have a very simple philosophy and I'm very methodical about my approach. And you might have heard me say this before on my podcast, Rob. Like, I never approach a former athlete, or if someone's referred to me and they reach out, I'm never just like, hey, what do you want to do with your life now? My whole philosophy is that there's a healing that has to take place before you get to that point. So I always look at it like, you want to make sure an athlete is good mentally, physically. A lot of times, female athletes, or any athlete for that matter, they're struggling with their health, with their physical health as well. So that's an important area. But mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, got to make sure an athlete is at a point where they can function and they're firing on all cylinders, so that they can get to a point where they're ready to create that next chapter of their lives. So my philosophy is dealing with those things up front. That way, as you start to move forward, you're not getting tripped up by anything internally or even externally that wouldn't have stopped you on your journey if we addressed it up front. So I work on those things up front, kind of getting them to a good place where they're able to operate, start creating their own opportunities. From there, helping them find clarity, looking at what do you want to do, not just for a paycheck, but what's something that you can dedicate yourself to the same way you did with your sport, that same tenacity, something where you're serving others, but also you're excited about it as well. And then from there, really, and this is where, everything you're doing with Alumni Direct really resonates with me, because once I have, my athletes locked in on a vision, then I'm going into, okay, now how do you come up with the game plan to put yourself in position? Even if that's going to take you 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, what are you doing now to lay that foundation? Right. And then connecting with other athletes who can help bring you up, people who are in the space you want to be in. How do you reach out to those people? How do you connect with them in a way that they actually want to give you advice or become mentors to you and help you help you follow, their trail of breadcrumbs. So that's kind of my strategic approach. Okay. But just a quick side note, another thing I always tell athletes is you got to remember that you're still a role model, right? Because just because you're no longer playing your sport, it doesn't mean that people aren't still looking up to you to see what you're going to do next. And all of us as former athletes have an opportunity to show like, hey, playing your sport isn't the best thing you're ever going to do in your life. You have an opportunity to do great things for the rest of your life. So that's all I would say about that.
No, that's great. So now we get to the part I talked in the beginning. I kind of gave the quick little high level 30,000 foot, as I like to say, view of what you're doing. But tell us more now about how people can find you, what you're doing. I mean, again, you're doing a lot of different things. My head's spinning, and podcasts and books and getting out in front of people, and your management business and consulting and everything else. But tell us more about that.
Yeah, I wear many different hats, Rob. As you know, the best place to really find everything I'm doing is just at tajdashaun.com. Because if you go there, it has links to the podcast, which is available on all platforms. My books are on there. Obviously, you can, check out some of the athletes I'm working with, schedule time to work with me. I always tell people, sometimes people will schedule a free call, not even an athlete. It might be the parent of an athlete or a coach. And I'm able to help an athlete on one call. They don't even necessarily need to do like an intensive deep dive or a program with me. But so I do the one-on-one, the group coaching, which is free to the athletes. Really, since I published my first book, and I've gone on to publish a second one. I'm working on 2 more right now, which will be out this year. These are collaboration books. So matter of fact, here, let me just show this real quick. Yeah, this is totally. Athlete to Entrepreneur, just like the name of your show, Athlete to Entrepreneurs. This is myself and 20 other former athletes turned entrepreneurs. And that's kind of our mission with that series, is just to show the athletes coming up behind us. You don't have to be LeBron James. You don't have to be Magic Johnson to do great things. You can take your athletic mindset and skill set and carve out your own lane and make your mark in this world. So Oh, I'm also the vice president of the same publishing company that helped me publish these books, which is
Okay.
self-published in 30 days. So in that role, I get to help other athletes tell their stories, get more stories out into the world. So that's become a mission of mine as well. But yeah, the podcast, the coaching, the books, um, got a few other, boards I sit on and different things like that. So I'm a busy man, just like you, Rob.
You are. I'll tell you what, for the young age, you're accomplishing a lot. That's awesome. So, well, it's been great talking. Like I said, I think there's a lot of synergies here, and we definitely want to help as many people as we can. And you can find Alumni Direct on alumnidirect.com. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube, our Alumni Direct YouTube channel. And definitely look out for this episode and other episodes. We want to get all types of athletes. It doesn't matter. I mean, you've seen the different shows so far, whether it's swimming, football, golf, baseball, basketball, a lot of different sports. And if we can make a positive impact, we'd love to do it. So thank you so much again. And I appreciate it. We look forward to talking to everybody again soon.